hand inside the bottle to give my brains a rest. The world should change so quickly. I'm sure it's for the best. Fire and water, they making war here behind my eye. The bottle should promise a better life, but these tears they cannot lie. Sing to them all.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Talking EthiX. And as you can see, I am joined today by Lulama Qabaka, who is from the EthiX Institute. He is an ethics and anti-corruption specialist, and he also has a BCom law degree qualification. Is that correct? He's also a stand-up comedian, which he might share with us a bit later on if we're lucky. But the podcast is brought to you by the EthiX app. That's EthiX with an X. A collaboration between the EthiX Institute, Lasuba Difference, and Corrie Campbell. Watch out for contact details during the podcast. It's all about talking to each other.
Thank you so much, Corrie. Just to correct him, I'm a sit-down comedian. And I must say, we are honored to have one of my personal favorite heroes. She is Miss Cynthia Stimpel. I'm sure lots of you have seen her on TV before. And she's known as the SAA Whistleblower, and she's got a book called Hijackers on board. She's also a director of the Whistleblower House and a co-founder of the Citizens of Conscience Foundation. Ms. Cynthia Stimpel, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here.
I know you could be having beer because it's a Friday afternoon, but you are here with us and we're very grateful.
We are
I'm
indeed. You're also one of my heroes, by the way. Before we get into this myriad of hats that you wear, tell us a bit about where you come from. Where does Cynthia come from? I know you were a big family, you went to boarding school, etc., etc.
Thank you, Corrie. Yes, I come from a small suburb called Bosmont, which is out in the West Rand. My family, parents were very focused on values. I come from a large family, and in growing up, my family taught us firstly to be self-sufficient. For instance, in winter we were all knitting caps and jerseys and gloves. In summer we were baking cookies for Christmas over the Christmas holidays. We would pick the fruit from my backyard and give to all our neighbors. My father taught us how to varnish and fix things in the house. So we learned a range of skills. But above all, my parents taught us values. They taught us not to take what is not ours. They taught us strongly to understand what is right and wrong in our behavior, in our speech, in how we conducted ourselves. And so it was this family ethics that my dad and mother instilled in us growing up. I think I grew up as every normal child, but I think that was my foundation in our principles and values.
And that's taken you through your entire life. I mean, there's a lovely story in your book where you brought some dolls home and your friend's mum had said, you can take them, it's fine, bring them back tomorrow. And your mom said, no, take them back right now. And she marched you right back there and that is teaching you right from wrong from a very young age.
From a very early age already. And she was determined, and we realized we did something wrong. So we learned from that lesson, indeed.
So Cynthia, I like that you spoke about childhood and the values that your family installed. So, that being said, do you think that when you look at how people can relate to your story in terms of growing up with a family that has good values and a good sense of right and wrong, would you say that people lose those values as soon as they enter the corporate space? Or would you say that there's maybe something wrong in people's homes privately behind walls? They act like they are ethical and above reproach, but in the home, what is being taught might be very unethical. And do you think those people come in broken into the corporate system, which leads us to this unethical behavior that we're seeing in corporate South Africa? What is your views on that?
Lulama, I think it's twofold. So it's a bit of both. The one is that we taught values as children. I don't think any parent would teach their child to do anything wrong. But when you get to the school and the playground, or what happens in either primary or high school, you're going to find that there's either bullying tactics or some injustice happening. And so people change. Which side makes you stronger, on the bullying side as a child, or the child that's being bullied would rather keep quiet and not speak out because they may be bullied again the next day. So you see a change in the character and the decision-making, internal decision-making of their values. Then you get to the corporate world, and there you see you have young people, newly graduate, want to do the best for an organization, then finding that they're coming across something that's unethical, they raise it, and their boss turns them down or stops them. They then are on the back foot. They are either ousted, victimized, suspended, and they have to leave the company. And then you ask yourself, where's the change in the values? Where's the change in the ethical behavior? And yes, in some cases where you're speaking about broken homes, they may not have had the opportunity to learn ethics, and so you follow what you see. There's a saying about children will not do as you say, but do as what they see around them, and that's what they would follow. Thanks.
If we can just get extension of that to the Whistleblower House. I love it when one goes onto the Whistleblower House website, you see a meeting place for courage. And that's what we're talking about, courage. Because whistleblowers, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear in it. So tell us a bit about the Whistleblower House, how it came about, because I think it's a very important institution that needs to get out there. How it was established, who your partners are, etc.
Thank you for that question. So Whistleblower House started in 2021 by like-minded people who wanted to find solutions for how do we help whistleblowers. And Bianca Goodson, who was a whistleblower herself, got together with Liesel Groenewald, who worked for the EthiX Institute, and asked and said, we need to start something. We need to start an organization because no one's getting help from the government, from any organization, and everyone is just left out on this limb, and how do we help them? And then Liesel contacted Ivan, and they had the discussion and thought, well, let's form an organization, and they called it the Whistleblower House. The name was actually taken from an organization in the Netherlands, which is called Klokken Leiden. So it was Whistleblower House, Huis voor Klokken Leiden in Dutch, and they chose to have a similar type of organization in English. Once they registered the organization in July 2021, they were looking then for like-minded people to join and assist and work with whistleblowers. That's when they heard, they knew of me already because I was working with Citizens of Conscience and helping whistleblowers, but more from just a support base. And so I was approached by Ivan Pillay and asked me if I would like to work with them, supporting whistleblowers. And I said gladly, because this is what I'm already working with, but I'm just not sort of a fully registered organization for it. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I see there's a lot of, in the Whistleblower House, you've got a lot of support, you've got legal, you've got health, financial risk, advice, job opportunities, advocacy, and acknowledgements. How's that going? How's the Whistleblower House going? And obviously we'll get to donations and people, we need people to start donating to the Whistleblower House. But for the moment, that question.
Indeed. I think in the very first discussions, the idea was if we just help 2 whistleblowers, we would have achieved our goal. If I have to tell you, as at today, we have over 180 whistleblowers that have come to us.
Wow.
And that's a huge number because we didn't foresee that at all. And the type of service offering we have for the whistleblowers is that, A, we partner with legal firms that want to help whistleblowers. So we've managed to get quite a lot of whistleblowers. About 80% of our whistleblowers require legal assistance. And we then send our whistleblower, we refer them to a legal firm who will either help from get disciplinary hearing, giving them guidance, or helping them write the affidavit, or helping them with the CCMA process or with the labor court process. We have another set of lawyers that are specializing in the Protected Disclosures Act. So they're willing to take the case further into either litigation or following the Protected Act disclosures process. So I think that is something that's new, and we're quite happy that now this act can be enforced. We've partnered with various psychologists who then help with counseling. And again, the majority of our clients for Whistleblower House requires counseling. So we get them either psychological assistance, and that last year we managed to get pro bono services mostly. This year we have some funding, so now we're able to pay for the services for whistleblowers. To some extent, we've been able to help whistleblowers from a financial support perspective, and a few we've been able to help from a safety perspective. So that's our current service offering.
Safety, if we can just go, what would safety be? Do you give them houses? Do you give them accommodation? Or how does that work?
So there's two parts. The one is if they need to upgrade the safety in their home, as in your cameras or security. But when they're feeling unsafe as their person and life being threatened, we actually then find a safe home for them. We don't work like the Witness Protection Organization. What we do is get them into Airbnb or a bed and breakfast where we will pay for it, and the complex they're staying is very secure. So that keeps the person safe.
Okay, fantastic.
And how do you screen an individual when they come forward? Because there's that big debate about a whistleblower versus someone who's trying to save themselves, aka Angela Greasy. How do you screen them, and how do you determine whether we're able to assist this person, or this one is running away from their own troubles and they want to burn others so that they can get off scot-free?
Exactly, and I agree with you totally. We've got a vetting system that we go through. So every whistleblower that comes through to us, we have to vet them. And we're working with an organization that does that. And between Ben and I, we call it our desktop research, to ensure that this is a genuine person, firstly, and we can find out in social media about their background, etc. And then from the vetting process will give us far more details about the person. And I agree with you, there is a range of the type of whistleblowers. And yes, and so we also need to be discerning at what point are they really truly blowing the whistle, and at what point do we then provide the services for them.
Can you feel if someone's not being honest with you? That's what I'm thinking.
Genuinely, we can, because we also interview them. So we have Zoom discussions, or I've been meeting quite a lot physically in the past, but of late we've been doing more Zoom calls. And when Ben and I, we always discuss afterwards just to get a sense of the person.
If you can just tell us who Ben is.
Oh, Ben Theron is the CEO. He's my colleague of the Whistleblower House.
Okay,
yes.
Great. And I see here celebrations, or have you got into that yet? Celebrations of whistleblowers and the media, or is that still coming? I know this thing has to get a bit more traction, right?
Exactly. It was on our planning for this year to probably do a year-end celebration of all whistleblowers, and the idea was to give awards created as a fundraising event whereby people buy tables, play a spot. We get whistleblowers to talk about their stories, so that way they have a voice. And secondly is to give awards to them. Because of our funding and the way we've been getting so many whistleblowers, and our attention is focused on the whistleblowers, we've decided to push it out for next year so that we at least give attention to it, and that it's a well-run process rather than just doing it because it was on our scorecard and then it's a tick box exercise, which we didn't want.
That's fantastic. I also... the media, have they come on board? How's the media been?
So at the moment, we've working very well with Mandy Wiener.
Yes.
She does the midday report, and we've when we needed to bounce anything off regarding from a media perspective, we would speak to Mandy, and we would, if when we're doing any of our webinars, we've invited Mandy to either co-host with us or be the moderator. So that's been one of our media interventions. We've also had Jeff Wicks of News 24 contact us, willing to work with us, and we've had the gentleman from the Sunday Times.
It's not a problem. We'll put it up. The psychologist, I know is a very important person in what you're trying to do. So how soon does the psychologist come into, after you and Ben, or you and or Ben have interviewed someone, how soon does the psychologist come in?
Almost immediately. So last year we partnered with the Psychological Society of South Africa, whereby we sent the cases to them. They then sent it to various psychologists. It took much longer because people would be writing back saying, I haven't been assigned a psychologist as yet. So this year we took a different stance. We've actually partnered directly with psychologists. So they give me their capacity. And as soon as I have a whistleblower on board, as soon as Ben and I have discussed and we note that they need psychological help, I immediately put them in touch. So within a week, are they in touch with the psychologist? The appointment may happen a week or two later, depending obviously on the appointments and the diary of the psychologist. But yes, we actually feel that that's the way we want to work. We want to first put them in touch with the psychologist and then with the lawyer, because we feel that process helps them firstly feel better about themselves.
Sure.
They far stronger when they speak to the legal person, because most legal people don't want to hear emotions. They just want the facts. So once they've been through even if it's 2 or 3 sessions, they just feel far more calmer, can deal with issues in a better way.
Cynthia, I want to take you back to your childhood. You spoke about the sense of right and wrong, and I think it goes across the racial line. Growing up, no one wanted to play with a telltale. You're called a telltale, and Bimpi, it cuts across. Okay.
Correct.
So you get to corporate SA, and you're a telltale, and then you do the whole whistleblowing thing. I think for me, psychologically, you're already damaged, because this thing goes all the way back to your childhood of, it's bad to tell on anybody. So then this brings us to, how do we change that mindset? Which is the reason why I asked that, is because we speak about acknowledging whistleblowers. Right now, the spin is quite negative. How do we put a positive gloss to it?
And it's exactly by acknowledging them and telling them that they did the right thing. Every time I speak to the whistleblower, I always tell them, thank you for your courage. Thank you for standing up, and thank you for taking this step, because it's a huge step. The step that most of the whistleblowers have taken is, the result is they've lost their jobs. They've lost their livelihoods. They can never find a job. They lose their homes. And the knock-on effect is so huge, because it impacts the husband, the children, the residual family around them, those that are taking care of parents. So I believe we need to acknowledge more often, and it needs to be everyone. Many people tell me, and if I'm the hero, you've done well. And I can imagine for the other whistleblowers. But behind the scenes, when that whistleblower is struggling with not a cent in the bank, with not being able to buy food, and if you got a child, how do you tell that child, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't buy that sweet, or I can't buy that toy. And so if we can I feel, citizens can play a huge role, just ordinary citizens. It doesn't even have to be about money. It's about just encouraging and patting them on the back and saying, we have your back. Come, if you need to talk, just come to me. If you need a cup of tea, come and visit me, or I'll come and visit you. It's little simple things that helps that person start feeling whole, because whistleblowers actually withdraw into themselves, and they start hitting themselves. They cross-question themselves. They have self-doubt. They're telling themselves, why did I do it? I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have stepped out of line. I should have followed the rules. And it's keep beating yourself up, which I feel is so wrong. And so when I speak to whistleblowers, I also encourage them to stop that mental anguish of beating yourself up. Start using positive affirmations. I'm okay. I did do the right thing. I will get through this. I don't know how, but I will get through this. And I think it's that encouragement we can give whistleblowers.
Cynthia, President Ramaphosa recently said the fight against corruption was among the foremost and most urgent tasks at the moment in the country's history. Is anything being done?
No. Nothing's being done, firstly, to fight corruption, and nothing is being done to support and protect whistleblowers. The President appeared at the Zondo Commission and also stated that whistleblowers should be protected. In the State of the Nation address, he also mentioned it, and nothing has happened. Repeatedly, publicly, he has stated it. So I don't believe that anything is going to be done. What we have seen recently about coming from the Department of Justice is that they have put out a discussion document regarding protection of whistleblowers and review of the Protected Disclosures Act. So that's the whistleblower legislation. The date for completion is the 15th of August. So we've already worked on it as Whistleblower House. We've speaking to many other organizations like Outer Corruption Watch and many other legal organizations are all looking at it. So everybody's really key to add value to this document and to make a difference. Our prayer at this point in time, though, is that government does act on it. Because at this, if one just looks at it, it is a discussion document. They haven't yet stipulated whether it will become a white paper and when it will become draft legislation. So we have to wait and see.
But who's working on it? Which government department? Where does it fall under? What is it? Where is it?
So at the moment with the Department of Justice, so it's under the Lamola jurisdiction. And we will all obviously respond to that. We will take it from there as Whistleblower House and as many other civil societies. I think we will follow up. We'll give a month or two and then follow up and see what's transpiring and if they can give us a program of how they're going to take this forward.
Yeah, that's as we were talking about now. Everyone's got an idea. Everyone's got to talk, but where's the action? Where are you actually going to be doing it? And I think that's what everyone wants.
Agreed.
I'm so glad
we need to see action.
Exactly. I'm glad other people like Arto are involved in this. That's great. And you guys. We also spoke recently about personal sacrifice. Now, you personally, you organising psychologists and in the Whistleblower House, how did you cope when it happened to you 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, it was hard. I went through that self-doubt. I didn't sleep. It was like a windmill in my mind going through. Why did I do it? How did I do it? And then you come to the same conclusion. I did the right thing. But it keeps you from sleeping. My daughter, who is a medical doctor, she immediately said, "Mom, you go and see a psychologist." And I did. So I did go and see a psychologist. With the psychologist and in my discussions with him, he asked me, how do I see myself going forward from here? And I told him I am so frustrated and that I hate my colleagues at SAA and the people I worked with because I went to them to stand with me as a group and everybody distanced themselves and said, "We're not doing anything, we need our jobs." So I felt, how could they not stand up and see what was wrong? So I felt this, not hatred for them, but just more like, how could they not? The hate, very much disappointed. But the hatred was more for my boss and for the people who did this to me. And I, in my own religious beliefs, I shouldn't be hating people because it affects my own psyche. And I felt I needed to get this out of my system. And I'd planned then to do a long walk and do a Camino, which I'm not sure if you know about. In southern Spain, it's called Camino de Santiago. And so I told this to the psychologist. I'd already told my family, I need to go and do something for me alone, because I need to get these feelings of frustration, these feelings of self-doubt, these feelings of wanting to continue my life, but how do I go forward, because I felt stuck. And so I said, I want to do this, and I invited my family members to join me at any point in time. I also felt I needed to forgive, because it was in that way, if I didn't forgive, I would be holding this within my own heart, which doesn't help me move forward. And when I explained that to the psychologist, he said to me, I think you're on the right path, go and do it. And if you need to see me, come back. But come back anyway, just for a chat.
Sure.
What he did recommend was that I buy the book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning, which I did immediately after my session with him. And I went to do this walk. Coming back, though, if I can explain, along my walk, I did cry. I journaled a lot. I was frustrated. I was angry. All those feelings were there. But each day walking, I think accompanied with physical work, together with mental work of journaling, I found that by the end of my journey, I felt much better about myself. I had come up with a plan of what I wanted to do for the future. And I felt healthier. I didn't feel stuck. I felt relieved, like some heavy cloak has been lifted off my shoulders. Yeah. And so I always try and recommend to whistleblowers that they need to do some physical activity, whether it's gym, whether it's running, walking your dog, whatever.
Or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Climbing mountains, yes. And yoga. The other thing that helped me, if I may say, as a coping mechanism was that I do yoga. And with yoga, there's always a combination of meditation. And so I did that daily. And it's my prayer life. I think most people that are very religious or spiritual, if I can use it that way, that take time for personal prayer or time for meditation, have found that they recover. I found, working with whistleblowers now, recover sooner than those that aren't doing something physical, because the body, mind, spiritual all works together, you know, and you need to find ways of keeping that in a combination. So yes, so that was my coping mechanism.
Cynthia, staying on that, what toxic habits should whistleblowers avoid?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So the first thing we always tend to want to do is, the easiest way is to have a glass of wine or a beer, which relaxes us. I know that. But in the state that one is, one could have one too many at times, or it could become a habit. So I think it's all the vices, the smoking, maybe drinking too much and perhaps some people may be in the habit of only talking negative and not looking at the positive side. And it impacts the psyche. So you're not going to get out of that rut. So I would recommend that if you notice, maybe if you keep a journal and you notice I had 5 glasses of wine today, maybe I can reduce it to 4 tomorrow. It start bringing that awareness for your body. Sometimes you don't know. I think I must have driven my family nuts during that time, you know, because you're constantly talking about your story. And when you're angry, you also bring that anger onto somebody else. Fortunately, I only drink at a social and with family gatherings, so probably it wasn't something that a habit that I took, and I don't smoke, so it also didn't affect me in that way. But what I did know is at the time is I wanted to run more, because once I ran, I just felt better about me. So I would encourage whistleblowers that perhaps just find some activity that you love. Because if I think of the time of SAA sitting in court, preparing with lawyers, I was sitting in front of my computer. And sometimes I was paralyzed and in tears. You can't move forward. And so it can easily become a bad habit that you just sit at your computer, you're just sitting and watching TV, or you're just sitting and, but you're not giving your body any movement or getting out of the situation that you are, like leaving your home.
Yeah.
It can also become a trap that you stay in your home, and that when you start fearing, especially if you get receiving threatening calls, or as in my case, and I think many whistleblower cases, that there are people following them. I had that. People were watching me. They were outside my house. They followed me. But if I decided I'm also getting out of this house, if they want to do anything, they can break in, but not while I'm there. It's to get out of the situation where you are and just find, because when you're not in the same situation, you see things with different eyes, and it does help the person.
So when did you become Cynthia again and not a whistleblower?
I think after I gave evidence at the Zondo Commission.
Is that his soothing, deep voice that Darth Vader hears?
Yes, because, I couldn't give evidence at my disciplinary hearing because it didn't happen. I appeared there with my lawyer, and SAA wasn't prepared. Yet they called the dates and the timing. Then we set CCMA dates, and this went on from 2016 into March 2017, where SAA just never appeared. Their lawyers were there, my lawyers was there, I was there, but the representative of the organization needs to be there, and they weren't there. So I could never speak. And it was only with the Zondo Commission where I was given a platform to speak and tell my story, and having the lead, evidence leader, Kate Hofmeyer, together with
A national treasure.
the Zondo Commission, JCJ Zondo speaking, was I able to speak, tell
It was
my
like a
story.
catharsis.
It really was a catharsis.
Cynthia.
You talk about habits and Lulama's question about toxic thoughts and things like that. I've come across a new thing that the youngsters are doing. It's called habit stacking. Have you heard of it?
No.
Habit stacking, and I was listening to a young person's podcast the other day, and they get a habit, and it's a habit that you do every day. Then what do you want to do? You want to build an ethical habit. You want to build your financial habit, also, and you stack a new thing on top of that, and you work at that. Then you stack a new thing on top of that. I thought this is fascinating to get maybe get an ethical habit stacking thing going. I think it's brilliant. You mentioned at the time when you got your colleagues started moving away from you and started avoiding you and didn't want to talk to you. Why was that?
Because it's associated with people that stand out and speak up, and it's called a stigma. So people will distance themselves. What I noticed initially at work when I told my colleagues that, firstly, this board resolution was wrong, it's unlawful, irregular, shall we write a memo or go and see the CEO and the CFO and discuss this? Everybody distanced themselves from me. When the next issues came up with the transaction advisor, etc., they all didn't want to, they just said, we need our jobs, we don't want to be part of it. So people tend to do that. When somebody is not doing or following the norm, they don't want to be associated. And the hardest thing, it's a way of isolating that person. With SAA, after the day I got my suspension letter, they actually sent out an email to all the staff to say that they mustn't contact with me and that I was suspended for misconduct. The staff have not contacted me. So it's even worse when you're sitting at home hoping someone will phone you to ask you what happened, and nobody phones. I send messages just to say, hey, I'm at home, I've been suspended, and nobody responds. Then you realize, oh, there's something very, very wrong here. The worst that people can do is the isolation, because you then start thinking that you did do something wrong.
Yes.
And it becomes ingrained because it's going through your mind. And this is where the psychosis starts happening, because you start the self-doubt. And why is nobody talking to me? Why is nobody phoning? Even friends, when my name appeared in the paper and friends sent me a message saying, oh, we noticed you were in the media. And I said, yes, let's meet for coffee and we can discuss and I'll tell you what happened. And silence. Nobody, I will say, I'm free next Wednesday, and silence. So they don't reciprocate. And then you know, okay, they don't want to meet you. So it's a very hard journey for whistleblowers. It's a very lonely journey.
How do we change that? How do we change the stigma? You started by saying there's a stigma. How do we change? There has to be a way of changing it.
There has to be a way, and I agree totally. We have to be more verbal. And as you mentioned right up front in the beginning of this interview, that we need to talk more. Talk more about the ethics, talk more about issues that's on the table, and not leave it like the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Talk about it. Once you start talking about it, you can clear the air. You can clear when someone has a different understanding or of an issue, or could have different conceptions around it. How do you then say, my understanding is this, I was told you did that, and then found out you never ever did it. You did something else. And then you can start having the conversation going. Most times with whistleblowers, they've spoken out, reported issues, or refused to do certain instructions that were irregular from their seniors. What does the senior do? Goes and gaslights them and then puts another story forward. And you as an innocent staff member, and I think most of your colleagues are just innocent because they're going with the information they're getting from the senior and thinking that's the truth. But to stop it is to find the truth. And to ask about the truth is to question and talk about it, and to see both sides of the story. You cannot go with one side of the story. You have to see the other side. And then as an individual, you need to be the discerning person. What is right and what is wrong? When we only listen to one side of the story is when we get things wrong. That's when we make the incorrect decisions. That's when we believe the wrong things. That's how many things are misconstrued, because you've only listened to one side of the story and you didn't listen to the other, and you didn't do your own interrogation, and you didn't do your own comparison of, I get this feeling from this when I ask this person, I get that feeling. Now, where's the truth in the matter? And then make that decision.
So often we get politicians who hijack a high-profile story whenever a whistleblower comes out, and then they politicize it. This wouldn't have happened if it was this party that led, not the other party, instead of focusing on the key issue. And then the last time we hear from them is we look into it. A pastime of this country, looking into it. What is that first big step, or that magic thing that needs to happen from a governance point of view for us to start improving how we manage whistleblowing in corporate SA as well as in the country as a whole?
I think the first step is when a whistleblower gives information, right, on whatever it is, they whistleblown or they reported something, that whistleblower should not be investigated. Nothing should happen to them. They shouldn't be fired. They shouldn't be dismissed. They shouldn't be isolated. What should happen, their story or whatever issue they reported on, must be investigated. Through the investigation, one will find whether there's truth in the matter. And if there's no truth in the matter, then you speak to this person and ask them, why did you do it? Was it malicious? Was it to run someone down? Whatever the reason, and that can be clarified, and then you have a different mechanism of resolving that issue.
Sure.
If there is truth in the matter, then you seek further evidence. Who's implicated? How large was the issue, as in monetary value that's stolen or fraudulent, etc.? How many people involved? That investigation then tells you how deep and wide the corruption is. Then a new type of action has to go from that. The whistleblower must not be touched. But what happens is we tend to shoot the messenger. And that's where we end up with all the problems we're currently happening. Whoever reports, we can change the stigma immediately by not judging or holding or physically harassing, victimizing, and violating that person's rights.
Sure.
It's you've reported. Now you have to have an objective mind to do the investigation. Only when you find there's malicious intent, then an action taken. And if the facts are true on the other, there's action taken, which has to go through law enforcement and the right channels. That whistleblower, nothing should happen to them. They shouldn't be losing their jobs. They should not be suffering the consequences that they are currently.
Sure.
Is it a, we were talking about this, Lulama and I, last time. Is there a moral leadership problem? Is there, it's the leaders that there's no leadership, basically.
We definitely have a moral leadership problem. We have a moral decay in our entire country. And we see it every day. And I can give a simple example. When we're driving, normal road, power is out, traffic lights are out. The rule says you wouldn't have passed for your driving license that when you get to a four-way stop, you stop. You
Sure.
look left, right, and then you cross when it is safe to do so.
And your turn.
And it's your turn. What happens is people just go through. And whether the traffic lights are still working, it's red, and people will go because they feel it's their right to do it. So when you start having that arrogance, it's my right to do this, no one's going to stop me because no one is there, that is where we start the moral decline. I always, when I do public speaking, I also ask the question, what would you do? It's late at night, or even in the day, there's a red traffic light. There's no other car next to you. There's no car crossing. Do you obey and stop and wait those couple of seconds or 30 seconds at the red traffic light? Or do you go just saying because no one's there to see me? And it is that attitude that in an organization is, there's no one here to see me take this book, so I'm going to take it. There's no one here to see me take that iPad, I'm going to take it. And it starts with small things at school. Again, think ethics should be started and trained at school, whereby don't touch what is not yours. It's not yours. Just learn from that. And once that's ingrained, we're able to respect it, other people's property. You also respect for yourself. I believe people who do what they're doing now with this moral decadence we're seeing in our country, it's because they don't even respect themselves. And that's why they can do what they do to others.
Last week or week or so ago, Lulama and I spoke about going to schools, because how do we change this? So we need a moral regeneration, and where do we start? And we were talking about going to schools, like your upbringing as a little girl at home. You knew what was right and wrong. We know South Africa is a damaged place. We know a lot of people have come through terrible hardships, and that adds to this. So we've just got to go in and try and regenerate a right from wrong. And it also just brings me back to you were part of the Conscience Foundation. Now, conscience is when I was doing my talks, I used to think about talk to people and say, "Where's your conscience muscle?" And people would say, "Maybe here, and mine is here." So whenever I need to exercise my conscience, I press that. And we must start getting, it's as simple as that. Where's your conscience muscle? Exercise it.
Indeed. And I like that one needs to exercise the conscience muscle. But to go back to your early question about where should ethics be taught? Okay, so definitely in the home, which we all know is being taught, but we lose it, or it fades away through other influences at the school level and university level, and then obviously in the workplace. So I would start with schools. It needs to be continued there, because children lose families and they lose their homes or that family structure, and that needs to be continued. It needs to be continued in movies, in the animation. I have 2 grandchildren, so I watch a lot of movies with them, and I'm sure you're watching with your daughter. There's some that are so violent. It's an animated movie, but there's violence in it. And then there's some like that show certain values all the time. I don't know if you know the series called Bluey. I watched that with my granddaughter. I've watched it. She loves it. And I realized they're very short, but in it, there's always some value in that. And I said, this is what we need to do. Bring to schools. This is what we need to do for children. It doesn't need to be in the animated form, can be in stories, can be just short presentations. The teacher can do it. That there's always this lesson. And this lesson, there's your stacking, the ethics stacking, where you bring it in and you build it and you build it. And it goes through when you, in high school, you have a different view of life.
Sure.
And how do we bring the ethics then in? And then when you're at university, most university students want to break out from the parents now and be adults and do whatever. But we need to have some sort of ethics stacking there for them and grounding. Sure. And the same in the workplace. The sad thing for me in the workplace is that we have a code of conduct, we have our values put up on the walls, we have the compliance listed, and the very people at the executive level, senior managers, and at board level are the ones who are not inculcating that behavior, that ethical behavior. They demand it of the staff, and the minute a staff steps out of line, they are easily fired, dismissed. But if an executive or any of that top level are not following the corporate ethics of that organization, there are excuses made for them. And that doesn't correlate. So one needs to find ways that it's embedded in the culture properly, and that everyone, be it the top person, the chairperson, the CEO, executive level, down to the person who is the most junior in the organization, I believe then we can make a difference in the ethics culture, in a moral pathway for our country.
It's interesting what you say. So when I do training sessions and people walk in late, let's say it's 2 junior staff members and a senior manager, I'll ask them, what do you do? Okay, I'm a clerk. You admin. What do you? I'm senior manager or head of this. I said, you 2 are late. The senior guy's just delayed. And normally there's an awkward silence, and that's the point I'm trying to make. And you need to have the same amount of accountability.
Exactly.
So it all starts there. And I agree with you. Coco Melon, for instance. The songs normally have a key message. They'll be, must brush your teeth before you sleep, don't eat too much sugar. So there needs to be a continuation from there, because then it stops somewhere in the middle. And then after university, suddenly there's a code of conduct.
Exactly.
But there hasn't been anything in between. That being said, you spoke about decadence. Do you think, what effect do you think social media has had on our moral conscience or what is it? What is the word I'm looking for? You see, it's after
morality.
Morality as a whole.
Yeah.
Because on social media, we see all these decadent lifestyles. We see our own leaders living these lifestyles that shouldn't even fit the salaries that they're earning. And that's what our younger generation subscribes to. And hence, for them, it's I have to be a tenderpreneur as well so that I can live this lifestyle without looking forward to working from the bottom and getting to that level. I want to get there now. There's a big nowism happening. And how have you seen that from the time you started at SAA till now? Have you seen a big difference in terms of the type of leaders we're producing?
Oh yes, definitely. We can see it, that it's like a get rich quick scheme for them. It's what's the easiest job that's going to get me to earn the money, that can get me to buy the fancy car, and what will it take for me to get the fancy car? So, and it's in that process that we miss the values. My father had the ruling that you have to stay in one job all the time. And that is old school because you can't. Some companies don't even last your lifetime. And the reason I worked in the bank was that I thought I would have a job for the lifetime. But it wasn't possible because banks were closing and you had to find new opportunities. So we need to teach our young future leaders that there is ways of getting to the top and achieving what they want to. They can get that smart car. Mm-hmm. They can get that mansion that they dreaming about. Mm-hmm. We cannot hold them back on their dreams, but they must do it in an ethical way. That there mustn't be this way that a quick rich scheme. If I do this, if I get into selling drugs, I will make X amount of money, sure, rather than doing an honest job first, like washing cars, then seeing how the car works and becoming a mechanic, and then finding how do I make my own dealer, become head of my own dealership, etc. That takes too long. And it's in that taking too long you forget to learn the ethics, you forget to learn the moral compass that your parents taught you. And it's easy to, if I do that, I'm going to get 100,000. Wow, just for dropping off something at someone's house. And that's easy. And it's because there hasn't been a discerning point in their mind that if I do this, yes, I'm making the money, and yes, I need the money, but is it the right thing to do?
Sure.
And it's that self-questioning, that self-awareness we need to start bringing back to ourselves. Am I doing the right thing? And am I doing it for the right reasons? Mm-hmm. Because it's easy, I just want it for material things.
Sure.
When that material things disappear, what then?
What's left? You know, Corrie, also another thing I find is that you get the self-help gurus who pass on false messages to impressionable people. I used to be poor when I ate porridge, but when I changed to cornflakes, my life changed. You should all buy cornflakes right away. And then people really subscribe to that, and then they end up all buying cornflakes, and that's how he actually becomes enriched, instead of being honest about how he achieved his method of success.
Indeed.
I think we've come to the end of today's chat, and it has been absolutely amazing.
Agreed.
Cynthia, you have been... you are my hero, as you are Lulama's, and I'd just like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and keep going. And we will put out, won't we, Andy? We will put out Whistleblower House donations. People must come and donate. Go onto your website. I see you've got a whole donation thing there on the website. So absolutely that. Congratulations on the book. Don't forget to buy Hijackers on Board. And thank you from me, Corrie.
And myself, Lou.
Thanks, Lou. And
now
thanks, Corrie.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If you're enjoying these talks, please thumbs up, subscribe.
Hit the bell for more content, and we look forward to engaging with you further.
Exactly.
Fire and water, they making war. Here behind my eye. The bottle she promised a better life, but these tears they cannot lie. Sing to them all.